The man who rode into Dalhart, Texas on that scorching afternoon in July 1878 carried himself like someone accustomed to watching his back. And Winona Warren noticed this immediately from her position behind the dusty window of the general store. She had been restocking shelves of canned goods when the sound of hoofbeats slowed outside, and despite every instinct screaming at her to retreat into the back room, she found herself frozen in place, watching as the stranger dismounted with the careful movements of someone who understood violence intimately. He stood well over 6 feet tall, wearing a weathered brown hat that shadowed most of his face, and when he tied his horse to the hitching post with gentle hands, something in Winona's chest tightened with an unfamiliar sensation she could not quite name. Her Uncle Samuel emerged from the back room carrying a crate of ammunition, completely oblivious to the tension radiating through Winona's entire body. She stepped backward quickly, nearly stumbling over a barrel of cornmeal in her haste to put distance between herself and the door. The bell above the entrance chimed as the stranger entered, and Winona found herself pressed against the far wall, her breathing shallow and rapid. "Afternoon," Samuel called out cheerfully, setting down his crate with a heavy thump. "What can I do for you today?" The stranger removed his hat, revealing sandy brown hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of weathered denim. He appeared to be somewhere in his mid-20s, perhaps 26 or 27, with the kind of face that suggested he smiled often, though at this particular moment his expression remained neutral and courteous. "Name's Logan Vance. Just rode in from Fort Worth. Looking to stock up on supplies before I head to the ranch I bought north of town." "The old Henderson place?" Samuel asked, his weathered face brightening with interest. "Heard someone finally purchased that property. Been sitting empty since old Henderson passed last winter." "That's the one," Logan confirmed, his voice carrying a warm timbre that somehow made Winona's anxiety spike higher rather than ease. "Going to take some work to get it running properly again, but the land's good. Planning to raise cattle, maybe some horses." Samuel nodded approvingly and launched into a discussion about the supplies Logan would need, completely failing to notice how his niece had practically melted into the shadows at the back of the store. But Logan noticed. His gaze had flickered to her twice now, quick glances that held no aggression or inappropriate interest, merely acknowledgement of another person's presence. The second time their eyes met, Winona felt her heart hammer so violently against her ribs that she pressed a hand to her chest. Logan's attention returned immediately to Samuel, giving her space without making a show of it. This small courtesy, this lack of forcing interaction, allowed Winona to breathe slightly easier even as she remained frozen in place. She watched as her uncle gathered items for Logan's list, observed the way the cowboy handled each purchase with care, counting out his money precisely and thanking Samuel for each item placed on the counter. "You have help out at the ranch?" Samuel asked as he wrapped packages in brown paper. "Henderson's place is a good size for one man to handle alone. I will be hiring some ranch hands once I get settled," Logan replied, hoping to find reliable men who know cattle and are not afraid of hard work. As the transaction continued, Winona found herself studying Logan Vance with a mixture of terror and something else she could not quite identify. He moved with deliberate purpose, never making sudden gestures, and when he spoke his voice remained level and calm. These observations felt important somehow, though she could not have explained why to anyone, least of all herself. The interaction concluded with Samuel helping Logan carry his purchases out to his horse. Winona remained pressed against the wall long after the bell above the door had ceased its jangling, her breath coming in short gasps that she struggled to control. Through the window, she watched Logan secure his supplies, mount his horse, and ride north out of town. Only when he had disappeared completely from view did she allow herself to sink onto an overturned crate, her legs suddenly too weak to support her weight. Samuel returned moments later, whistling tunelessly as he swept the floor. He glanced at his niece, and his expression softened with understanding that came from 6 months of living under the same roof with her damaged spirit. "New neighbor seems decent enough," he said quietly, not pressing for conversation. "Spoke proper and paid fair. Henderson's place will be good to see running again." Winona nodded wordlessly, hugging her arms around herself despite the oppressive Texas heat that made the store's interior feel like the inside of an oven. 6 months had passed since the night that had shattered her world. 6 months since she had fled Denver with nothing but the clothes on her back and the desperate hope that her uncle would take her in, without asking too many questions. Samuel had proven himself a blessing she had not deserved, giving her work in his store and a room above it, asking nothing about the circumstances that had brought his 22-year-old niece to his doorstep, looking like a frightened rabbit. The remainder of that afternoon passed in its usual rhythm. A few more customers came and went, mostly familiar faces from around Dalhart, who had grown accustomed to Winona's silence and tendency to vanish into the stockroom whenever possible. She served those she absolutely had to, women mostly, keeping her eyes downcast and her words to a bare minimum. Samuel handled everyone else, particularly the men, understanding without words that his niece could not yet manage such interactions. That evening, as Winona prepared a simple supper of beans and cornbread in the small kitchen above the store, Samuel broached the subject she had been dreading. "Logan Vance will likely become a regular customer. Henderson's place is the closest ranch to town on the north side. He will be coming in for supplies regularly once he is properly established." Winona's hands stilled over the pot she had been stirring. "I can stay in the back when he comes." "You can," Samuel agreed, settling into his chair at the small wooden table. "But Winona, girl, you cannot hide forever. Not every man is like what happened to you in Denver." She flinched at even the oblique reference to her past, her shoulders hunching defensively. "I know that. In my head I know that, but my body does not seem to understand the difference." Samuel sighed heavily, his weathered hands folding on the table before him. "I will not push you. I promised that when you arrived, and I keep my promises. But I hate seeing you live like this, always afraid, always looking over your shoulder. You are young still. You deserve a life that is more than just surviving day to day." "Surviving is enough for now," Winona said quietly, ladling beans onto 2 plates. "Surviving is more than I managed for a long time." They ate in companionable silence after that, and Winona was grateful once again for her uncle's patience. She had been 17 when she met Marcus Peterson in Denver, 17, and foolish enough to believe that a handsome face and smooth words meant genuine affection. By the time she understood the true nature of the man who had courted her so persistently, it had been too late. 2 years of hell had followed, 2 years of fists and cruel words, of isolation and terror, until the night she had finally found the courage to run while Marcus lay passed out drunk in their shabby boarding house room. She had not looked back, had not taken anything except the few dollars she had managed to hide, and the dress she wore. The journey to Dalhart had taken every ounce of courage she possessed, traveling alone on stage coaches and trains, jumping at every shadow and male voice. Finding her uncle's store had felt like stumbling into sanctuary, and Samuel had taken one look at her bruised face and haunted eyes before pulling her inside and locking the door behind them. That night, lying in her narrow bed under the eaves of the building, Winona found her thoughts returning unbidden to Logan Vance. She could not have explained why the cowboy lingered in her mind. Perhaps it was simply because he represented something new in the carefully controlled routine she had built for herself. Or perhaps it was the way he had noticed her discomfort and immediately given her space, not taking offense or demanding acknowledgement. Whatever the reason, she fell asleep with the image of those denim blue eyes in her mind, and for once her dreams did not descend into nightmares. Logan Vance did indeed become a regular presence in Dalhart over the following weeks. True to Samuel's prediction, the cowboy appeared at the general store every few days, always polite, always courteous, conducting his business efficiently before departing. Winona made herself scarce during these visits, retreating to the stockroom or inventing errands that took her upstairs. She watched from hidden vantage points, unable to help herself, observing as Logan interacted with her uncle and the other townsfolk who sometimes occupied the store during his visits. He seemed well-liked, she noticed. Men respected his knowledge of ranching and horses, while women appreciated his respectful manner, and the way he never made inappropriate comments or let his gaze linger anywhere it should not. He worked hard on the Henderson place, or the Vance Ranch as people were beginning to call it, hiring 3 ranch hands and beginning the slow process of building up his herd. Information about him filtered through the store via the gossip that sustained small towns, and Winona absorbed it all from the safety of her shadows. Logan had come from Fort Worth, where his father owned a successful freight business. He was the youngest of 4 sons, and while his brothers had all gone into the family business, Logan had always wanted to ranch. His father had finally agreed to fund the purchase of property, and at 26 years old, Logan had struck out to build something of his own. He was unmarried, had no steady sweetheart waiting back in Fort Worth, and by all accounts possessed both the work ethic and the temperament to make a success of his new venture. 6 weeks after Logan's first appearance in the store, circumstances finally forced an interaction that Winona had been dreading. Samuel had gone to Fort Worth to meet with his own suppliers, a trip he made 4 times a year, and despite Winona's protests, he had insisted she mind the store alone for the 2 days he would be gone. "You cannot avoid running this place forever," he had said firmly but kindly. "Most of our customers know you by now. They will be patient. And I truly need you to do this, Winona. I would not ask if it were not important." So she had agreed, terror making her stomach churn but determination keeping her spine straight. The first day had gone reasonably well. She had served the handful of customers who appeared with shaking hands and barely audible words, but she had managed. Most were women anyway, coming for flour and sugar and yard goods. She was just beginning to think she might survive the experience when the bell above the door chimed on the morning of the second day, and Logan Vance walked in. Winona's entire body went rigid. She stood behind the counter, trapped by circumstance, her hands gripping the edge of the wooden surface so tightly her knuckles turned white. Logan stopped just inside the doorway, his hat already in his hands, and his eyes registered her panic immediately. "Morning," he said quietly, not moving further into the store. "Your uncle around?" Winona tried to speak, but her throat had closed completely. She managed to shake her head, a jerky motion that sent her dark brown hair slipping from its pins. Logan nodded slowly, his expression calm and unthreatening. "All right. I need some supplies, but there is no rush. I can come back when he returns if you would prefer." The offer was genuine, Winona could tell. He would turn around and leave right now if she gave any indication that his presence was unwelcome. The knowledge of this choice, the power it gave her in the situation, allowed a small measure of control to return. She swallowed hard and forced words past her frozen vocal cords. "What do you need?" 20 feet of rope, some nails, and coffee if you have any fresh arrived," Logan said, still not moving from his position near the door. "But truly, I can wait if this is difficult." "I can manage," Winona whispered, though she was not at all certain this was true. She moved on wooden legs to the section where rope was stored, intensely aware of Logan's presence even though he remained carefully by the entrance. Her hands trembled as she measured the rope, having to start over twice because she lost count. Logan watched her struggle for a moment before speaking again, his voice gentle. "I will stay right here by the door. You take your time. No rush whatsoever." The kindness in his tone nearly undid her completely. Winona felt tears prick at her eyes and she blinked furiously to hold them back. She managed to cut the rope, though the edges were ragged from her shaking hands. The nails were easier, scooped from a bin into a paper bag. She retrieved a tin of coffee from the shelf behind the counter, then stood there holding all the items, frozen once more by the impossibility of the next step. To complete the transaction, she would have to approach Logan, would have to get close enough to hand him his purchases and take his money. "You can set them on the counter," Logan suggested quietly, as if reading her mind. "I will come get them and leave payment. You do not have to come any closer if you do not want to." Winona did exactly that, placing the items carefully on the counter before retreating to press herself against the wall behind it. Logan approached slowly, his movements deliberate and unthreatening, collected his purchases, and laid coins on the counter with precise care. He counted them out loud so she could verify the amount without having to check herself. "Thank you," he said, backing away immediately toward the door. "I appreciate you helping me despite your fear. That took courage." He was gone before she could formulate any response, the bell chiming his departure. Winona remained frozen against the wall for several minutes, her heart racing so fast she felt dizzy. But slowly, as her breathing returned to normal, she realized something astonishing. She had done it. She had served a male customer, had conducted a transaction, and while it had been terrifying, she had not collapsed or fled. The accomplishment felt monumental. When Samuel returned that evening, she told him about the encounter, leaving out most of the details about her panic, but admitting that Logan had been patient and kind. Her uncle smiled at her with such pride that Winona felt tears threaten again. "That boy has good character," Samuel observed. "You can see it in how he treats people, how he handles his horse, how he pays his debts. There is good men in this world, Winona, even if you got tangled up with a bad one before." The following week, Logan appeared at the store again during one of the times when Winona was minding the counter, while Samuel handled inventory in the back. She saw him through the window and felt the familiar spike of panic. But underneath, it now was something else. A tiny thread of curiosity, perhaps, or maybe just the memory that she had survived their last encounter. Logan entered and immediately took up his now familiar position near the door, hat in hand. "Afternoon, Miss Warren. Is Samuel available, or would you prefer I return later?" The fact that he knew her name should not have surprised her. Dalhart was a small town and news traveled fast. But hearing it spoken in his warm voice did something strange to her equilibrium. "He is in the back. I can help you." "Only if you are comfortable doing so," Logan replied, and again there was no pressure in his words, only genuine concern for her well-being. "I need ammunition for my rifle, some tobacco, and a new whetstone if you have any quality ones in stock." Winona managed the transaction better this time, though her hands still trembled, and she could not bring herself to meet Logan's eyes directly. He maintained his distance, collected his purchases from the counter, and left payment before departing with a polite thank you. It became a pattern over the following weeks. Logan would come to the store, conduct his business with either Samuel or Winona depending on who was available, and always treated Winona's limitations with patience and understanding that she had never expected to receive from any man. Summer faded into autumn, and with the changing season came the realization that Winona's paralyzing fear of Logan Vance had begun to ease, so gradually she had barely noticed it happening. She still could not engage in prolonged conversation with him, still kept physical distance between them, but his presence no longer sent her into complete panic. She began to serve him without retreating to the back wall, began to meet his eyes for brief seconds before looking away, began to offer a word or two beyond the bare minimum required for transactions. Logan never pushed for more. He seemed content to conduct his business and depart, always respectful, always kind. But Winona noticed things about him during these brief interactions. The way he smiled when he talked about his ranch, the pride in his voice when he mentioned his growing herd. The care he took with everything he handled, from the goods he purchased to the horse he rode. The genuine warmth with which he greeted other townsfolk, remembering details about their lives and asking after their families. October brought cooler weather and preparations for winter. Winona had been in Dalhart for nearly 8 months now, and the healing that had seemed impossible in those first dark weeks was happening, slowly but undeniably. She still startled easily, still preferred to avoid most men, still woke some nights from dreams that left her gasping in terror. But the good days outnumbered the bad now, and she had begun to think about a future that might hold more than just survival. It was on a crisp Saturday morning in late October when everything changed. The store was unusually busy, with several customers browsing simultaneously. Samuel was helping Mrs. Henderson, the widow of the former ranch owner, select fabric for a new dress, while Winona minded the counter. 2 men she recognized vaguely, ranch hands from one of the spreads south of town, were examining saddles near the door. When Logan entered, Winona was in the middle of measuring molasses for old Mr. Patterson, and she offered Logan a small nod of acknowledgement that would have been unthinkable 3 months prior. Logan returned the gesture and moved to browse the shelves, clearly content to wait his turn. One of the ranch hands, a rough-looking man with a scar across his cheek, noticed Logan and called out a greeting that seemed friendly enough on the surface, but carried an edge Winona could not quite define. "Vance, heard you lost 3 head to that cougar up north." "That cat's been causing problems for months now." 2 head, Logan corrected calmly, "and I have been tracking it. Should have the situation handled soon." "Need help?" the second ranch hand asked, his tone suggesting the offer was more challenge than genuine assistance. "Some of us know how to handle predators properly." The atmosphere in the store shifted subtly, tension creeping into what had been a peaceful morning. Logan's expression remained pleasant, but Winona noticed the way his posture changed, becoming more alert. "I appreciate the offer, but I have the situation under control." "Do you now?" The scarred ranch hand moved closer, his body language aggressive in a way that made Winona's hands shake as she tried to finish measuring Mr. Patterson's molasses. "Seems to me a fancy boy from Fort Worth might be in over his head with real ranch work. Your daddy's money cannot solve every problem, Vance." Samuel looked up from the fabric he had been displaying, his weathered face settling into stern lines. "That will be enough of that talk in my store, Daniels. You have business here, or are you just here to cause trouble?" Daniels ignored Samuel, his attention fixed on Logan. "Just offering friendly advice." Maybe the Henderson place is too much for one man to handle, especially one who has been playing at ranching for all of 5 months. Logan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained level. I appreciate your concern, but as I said, I have the situation handled. Now, if you will excuse me, I have supplies to purchase. What happened next occurred so quickly that Winona barely had time to process it. Daniels moved suddenly, shoving Logan's shoulder in what could have been construed as a rough, friendly gesture, but was clearly intended as provocation. Logan stepped back to maintain his balance, his hand instinctively moving toward his hip before he consciously stopped the motion. He was armed, as most men were in this territory, but he clearly had no intention of escalating the situation into violence. "Do not touch me again," Logan said quietly, steel underlying the calm words. Daniels grinned unpleasantly. "Or what? You going to shoot me over a friendly push in front of all these witnesses?" "I am going to ask you to leave," Samuel interjected firmly, moving between the two men despite the significant difference in his age and size compared to the aggressive ranch hand. "You have no business here, Daniels, and you are not welcome." For a tense moment, it seemed Daniels might push the confrontation further. His hand hovered near his own weapon, and Winona felt terror flooding through her system in familiar, overwhelming waves. But then the sound of multiple horses outside drew everyone's attention. Through the window, Sheriff Tom Garrett could be seen dismounting along with 2 of his deputies. The fight went out of Daniels immediately. He stepped back, raising his hands in mock surrender. "No trouble here, Sheriff. Just having a conversation." "A conversation that is concluded," the sheriff said firmly as he entered the store, his sharp eyes assessing the situation instantly. "You and Collins head on out. I believe your boss has work waiting for you back at the ranch." The 2 ranch hands departed without further protest, though Daniels shot Logan a look that promised the matter was not finished. The sheriff watched them ride off before turning to Logan. "Any actual trouble, Vance?" "Nothing I could not handle," Logan replied, tension slowly draining from his shoulders. "Just posturing." "Daniels has been looking for trouble lately," Sheriff Garrett observed. "His boss knows it too." "I will have a word with the foreman out at their place. Make sure Daniels understands that harassing neighbors is not acceptable." After the sheriff departed, and the store emptied of customers shaken by the confrontation, Winona found herself standing behind the counter, her entire body trembling with reaction to the violence that had almost erupted. Logan had moved to the window, checking to ensure Daniels and his companion had truly departed, and Samuel was muttering angrily about troublemakers. Logan turned from the window, and his eyes found Winona immediately. Whatever he saw in her expression made him take a step forward before consciously stopping himself. "Miss Warren, are you all right?" She tried to respond but could not make her voice work. The confrontation had triggered memories she worked hard to keep buried, memories of Marcus's rages and the violence that followed. Her breathing was coming too fast, shallow pants that were not pulling enough air into her lungs. "She is having a panic attack," Samuel said, moving quickly to his niece's side. "Winona, girl, breathe slower. You are safe. Nothing happened. Everyone is safe." But Winona could not seem to follow the instruction. Her vision was tunneling, black spots dancing at the edges. She gripped the counter, feeling herself starting to slide toward the floor as her legs refused to support her weight. "Let me help," Logan said quietly, already moving toward them despite knowing his presence was likely making things worse. He caught Winona before she could fall, his strong hands gentle as they steadied her. "Easy now. Samuel, get her some water. Miss Warren, listen to my voice. You need to breathe slower. In through your nose, count to 4. Out through your mouth, count to 4. Can you do that with me? Something about the calm authority in his voice cut through the panic. Winona found herself following his instructions, drawing in a shaky breath through her nose while Logan counted quietly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release through her mouth while he counted again. The world gradually came back into focus. She became aware that Logan was supporting most of her weight, one arm around her waist while his other hand held her arm, keeping her upright but not restraining her. "That is good," Logan encouraged as her breathing stabilized. "You are doing fine. Keep breathing just like that." Samuel returned with a dipper of water, and Logan carefully helped Winona to the stool kept behind the counter, making sure she was steady before he stepped back to give her space. She sipped the water with shaking hands, feeling utterly humiliated that Logan had witnessed her complete breakdown. "I apologize," she whispered once she could speak. "I am sorry you had to see that." "You have nothing to apologize for," Logan said firmly, crouching down so he was at her eye level rather than looming over her. "That situation was frightening. Your reaction is completely understandable." "I used to be braver," Winona said, tears finally spilling over to track down her cheeks. "Before I was not like this. I could handle things." Logan's expression softened with understanding that went deeper than Winona expected. "Someone hurt you, badly enough that you are still healing from it. That does not make you weak or cowardly, it makes you human." The statement hung in the air between them, acknowledgement of truths that had never been spoken aloud. Winona met Logan's eyes fully for the first time, truly looked at him, and what she saw there was kindness without pity, understanding without judgment. "I am afraid of men," she heard herself whisper, the confession torn from somewhere deep inside. "I know it is not fair. I know you are not like what was done to me, but I cannot seem to make the fear stop." Logan held her gaze steadily. "Then take your time. I will wait as long as you need." The promise settled into Winona's chest, solid and real. She had expected platitudes or false reassurance or worse, irritation at her damaged state. Instead, Logan was offering her something precious: time, patience, and the space to heal at her own pace without pressure or expectation. "Why would you wait?" she asked, genuinely confused. "You barely know me." Logan smiled, a gentle expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I know enough. I know you are brave to serve customers despite your fear. I know you work hard helping your uncle keep this store running. I know you have kind eyes and you treat everyone with respect, even when you are terrified. That is enough for me to want to know more, whenever you are ready to let me." Samuel cleared his throat awkwardly, clearly moved by the exchange. "I need to check the stockroom inventory," he announced, giving them privacy despite the lack of actual need for such a task. After her uncle disappeared through the back door, Winona and Logan remained where they were, the silence between them surprisingly comfortable despite the emotional intensity of the previous moments. Finally, Winona spoke again. "I was engaged before, in Denver." His name was Marcus, and at first he seemed wonderful, attentive and charming. By the time I realized what he truly was, I was trapped. 2 years I stayed, too afraid to leave, too ashamed to ask for help. He broke 3 of my ribs once for burning his supper. Blackened both my eyes for speaking to another man at the market. The scars are mostly hidden now, but they are there. Logan listened without interruption, his expression darkening with anger that was clearly not directed at Winona. When she fell silent, he spoke carefully. "How did you escape?" "He came home drunk one night, drunker than usual. He passed out before he could start hitting me. I just ran, left everything and ran. I had been hiding money for months, small coins he never noticed missing. It was enough to get me here to my uncle." I have been safe here for 8 months now, but I am still so afraid all the time." "Fear is not weakness," Logan said quietly. "Fear kept you alive when you needed to survive. But Winona, you are safe now. That man is not here. I promise you, I would never hurt you the way he did. I would never hurt you at all. And I mean what I said. I will wait however long it takes for you to believe that." The conversation marked a turning point. From that day forward, something shifted between Winona and Logan. He continued to come to the store for supplies, but now their interactions lasted longer, evolved beyond simple transactions into genuine conversations. Logan told her about his ranch, the challenges and triumphs of building something from nothing. She told him about her childhood in Missouri, before her parents had died of fever, about the books she loved to read, about her dream of someday feeling safe enough to live a normal life. November arrived with the first hints of real cold, and Logan began appearing at the store with small gifts that he presented with such casual nonchalance that Winona could accept them without feeling pressured. A book of poetry that he mentioned he had purchased in Fort Worth, but did not have time to read. Wildflowers that he claimed he had picked on a whim while riding his property line. A pretty blue ribbon that he said reminded him of the color of the autumn sky. Each gift was given with no expectation of reciprocation, no strings attached. Logan simply wanted to bring small moments of joy into Winona's life, and gradually, she began to trust that his intentions were genuine. She found herself watching for him, anticipating his visits, feeling disappointed on days when he did not appear. Samuel observed this development with quiet satisfaction, saying nothing but ensuring that Winona had opportunities to interact with Logan without hovering supervision. The other townsfolk began to notice as well. Dalhart was too small for anything to remain secret for long, and soon everyone knew that Logan Vance was courting Samuel Warren's damaged niece with the patience of a saint. Some thought him foolish for pursuing a woman so clearly broken. Others found it romantic. The women of the town mostly approved, having judged Logan to be exactly the kind of decent man Winona needed. The men respected his restraint and his obvious genuine affection for the girl. Winter set in properly in December, bringing snow that transformed the dusty Texas town into something almost magical. Logan continued his patient courtship, and Winona found herself responding in small ways. She began to smile when he entered the store. She asked him questions about his life, his family, his dreams for the future. She accepted his invitation to take a brief walk down the main street in broad daylight with her uncle trailing at a discreet distance. It was during one of these walks, on a cold afternoon 2 days before Christmas, that Winona first voluntarily touched Logan. They had been talking about nothing in particular, their breath forming clouds in the frozen air, when Winona stumbled slightly on a patch of ice. Logan steadied her instinctively, then immediately released her as he always did, giving her control of the contact. But this time, Winona reached out and took his hand. The gesture was tentative, her gloved fingers barely touching his, but it was deliberate. Logan froze, clearly surprised, then carefully closed his fingers around hers, holding gently but not tightly, ready to release the instant she showed any sign of distress. "Is this all right?" he asked quietly. Winona nodded, marveling at her own courage. "It is more than all right." They walked the rest of the way back to the store hand in hand, and when they arrived, Logan raised her fingers to his lips and pressed the gentlest of kisses to her knuckles through the fabric of her glove. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Christmas arrived, and Logan presented Winona with a beautiful shawl he had purchased during a trip to Fort Worth, deep green wool with delicate embroidery along the edges. She gave him a set of handkerchiefs she had sewn herself, her stitches careful and precise. each one edged in blue thread. The exchange felt significant, an acknowledgement that they were becoming something more than acquaintances. January 1879 brought bitter cold and a blizzard that shut down travel for 3 days. When it cleared, Logan appeared at the store looking worried, explaining that he had been unable to make the trip to town and had spent the entire storm concerned for Winona's well-being. The depth of his worry, the genuine fear in his eyes at the thought that something might have happened to her, made Winona's heart do strange things in her chest. "I am well," she assured him, touched by his concern. "Samuel and I were warm and safe. We had plenty of supplies." "I know that logically," Logan said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "But I could not stop thinking about you, could not stop worrying. Winona, I need to tell you something, and I do not want to pressure you, but I cannot keep it to myself any longer. I have fallen in love with you." The declaration hung between them, vulnerable and honest. Winona stared at Logan, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to run, to retreat into the safety of her fear. But a larger part, the part that had been slowly healing under Logan's patient care, recognized the truth in his words and acknowledged the matching truth in her own heart. "I think I love you too," she whispered, the words terrifying and liberating in equal measure. "But Logan, I am still so afraid. What if I cannot be what you need? What if I am too broken?" Logan closed the distance between them, moving slowly enough that she could stop him if she chose, and took both her hands in his. "You are not broken. You are healing. And I do not need you to be anything other than exactly who you are. We can take this as slowly as you need. There is no rush." February brought the first signs of coming spring, and with it, Winona felt her own internal thaw continuing. She and Logan began spending more time together, always in public, always with her setting the pace and boundaries. They had dinner with Samuel at the store several times. They attended church together on Sundays. They took walks along the edge of town, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Logan told her about his childhood in Fort Worth, the youngest son of a successful family, always feeling slightly out of place among his business-minded brothers. He spoke of his love for the land, for animals, for building something with his own hands. He confessed his fears about making the ranch successful, about living up to his own expectations. Winona shared more about her ordeal with Marcus, details she had never told anyone, not even Samuel. Logan listened without judgment, his anger on her behalf evident but controlled. He thanked her for trusting him with her story, for letting him understand the depth of what she had survived. "You are the strongest person I have ever met," he told her one evening as they sat on the bench outside the store, watching the sun set in streaks of orange and pink. "What you survived, what you escaped, the way you have rebuilt your life, it is remarkable." "I did not feel strong," Winona admitted. "For so long I just felt weak and stupid for getting trapped in the first place." "You were young and manipulated by someone who knew how to exploit your kindness," Logan said firmly. "That is not weakness. That is the evil in him, not any failing in you. You understand that, right?" Winona considered the question seriously. "I am beginning to. When I look at how patient you have been, how gentle, I can see the contrast. I can see that what Marcus did was not normal or acceptable, that healthy love does not look like what I experienced with him." "Healthy love looks like this," Logan said, gesturing between them. "It looks like respect and patience and genuine care for the other person's well-being. It looks like waiting as long as it takes for you to feel safe and comfortable. It looks like me falling more in love with you every single day and being grateful for whatever pieces of yourself you are willing to share with me." March arrived with warming temperatures and the first wildflowers beginning to bloom across the Texas plains. Winona continued to grow more comfortable with Logan's presence, and one afternoon, she surprised herself by inviting him to visit the ranch. She had never been to his property, had never felt ready for the isolation that such a visit would entail. But suddenly, she wanted to see the place that meant so much to him, wanted to understand that part of his life. Logan's face lit up with joy at the invitation. "Are you certain? I would love to show you the ranch, but only if you are truly comfortable with it. Samuel could come too if that would make you feel better." "Just us," Winona said, marveling at her own courage. "I trust you, Logan. I want to see your home." The following Saturday, Logan arrived at the store with his wagon hitched to two sturdy horses. Samuel helped Winona up onto the seat, giving her an encouraging smile and a whispered, "You are doing wonderfully, girl. I am proud of you." The ride to Logan's ranch took about 45 minutes, following the road north out of Dalhart before turning onto a smaller track that led through gently rolling grassland. Logan kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out landmarks and telling stories about the area. Winona found herself relaxing, enjoying the spring sunshine and the surprisingly pleasant experience of being alone with Logan outside of town. The ranch, when they arrived, was more impressive than Winona had expected. The house was modest but well-maintained, a sturdy structure with a wide porch and glass windows that would let in plenty of light. The barn was larger, clearly new construction, and in the corrals she could see dozens of cattle and several beautiful horses. Logan handed her down from the wagon with careful hands, and Winona felt a flutter of nerves as she realized how isolated they were. There was no one here except Logan's 3 ranch hands, who were currently out checking the herd according to Logan's explanation. They were truly alone. "Let me show you around," Logan offered, sensing her tension but not commenting on it. He kept a respectful distance as he led her first to the corrals, where he introduced her to his favorite horse, a smart bay mare named Dulcie. Winona found herself charmed by the animals, by Logan's obvious affection for them, by the pride in his voice as he explained his plans for breeding quality stock. They toured the barn next, with Logan showing off the improvements he had made and outlining future projects. His enthusiasm was infectious, and Winona found herself genuinely interested in learning about ranch life, so different from her town-bound existence. Finally, Logan showed her the house. It was clean and organized inside, though clearly decorated by someone with no particular eye for aesthetics. Functional furniture, bare walls, dishes stacked neatly in a simple kitchen. "I am not much for making a place pretty," Logan admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "I focus more on making sure everything works properly." "It has good bones," Winona observed, looking around. "It just needs some touches to make it feel like a home instead of just a shelter." "Maybe someday you could help me with that," Logan said quietly, the implication clear even though he did not press the point. "Whenever you are ready." They had lunch at his simple kitchen table. Bread and cheese and cold chicken that Logan had clearly prepared in anticipation of her visit. The domesticity of it felt strange but pleasant, and Winona found herself imagining what it might be like to live here, to share this space with Logan, to build a life together. After lunch, they sat on the porch and watched clouds drift across the vast Texas sky. Logan talked about his vision for the ranch, how he wanted to build it into something significant, a legacy to pass on to future generations. Winona listened, her heart swelling with emotion as she realized how much she wanted to be part of that future, part of his vision. "Logan," she said, interrupting his description of a new breeding program he wanted to implement, "I need to tell you something." He turned to her immediately, giving her his full attention. "What is it?" "I am not afraid anymore, not of you, not like I was." The words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other. "When I am with you, I feel safe in a way I have not felt since before Marcus. You have been so patient with me, so kind. You have given me the time and space I needed to heal, and because of that, I have healed. I know I still have moments where I panic, where the past overwhelms me. But with you, those moments are becoming less and less frequent. I love you, Logan. I love you so much it terrifies me in a completely different way than I was terrified before." Logan's eyes had grown bright with emotion as she spoke. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and cupped her cheek with one hand. "Winona Warren, you are the most remarkable woman I have ever known. I love you more than I have words to express. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that love can be gentle and safe and beautiful. Will you marry me?" The proposal hung in the air between them, perfect and terrifying and exactly right. Winona felt tears streaming down her face as she nodded. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Logan pulled her into his arms, and for the first time, Winona allowed herself to be held without any fear or tension. She melted into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady beat of his heart against her ear. When he tilted her face up and kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise, Winona kissed him back, pouring all her love and trust and hope for the future into that single perfect moment. They were married 6 weeks later in the small church in Dalhart, with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Samuel gave Winona away with tears streaming down his weathered face, grateful beyond words that his niece had found someone worthy of her. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, and when Logan slid the gold band onto Winona's finger and promised to love and cherish her for the rest of his days, she believed him with her whole heart. The first months of their marriage were an adjustment. Winona had moments of panic, times when Logan moved too quickly or spoke too loudly, and her body reacted with fear before her mind could catch up. But Logan handled each incident with the same patient understanding he had shown from the beginning. He learned her triggers, adapted his behavior, gave her space when she needed it and comfort when she could accept it. Gradually, intimacy became easier. Winona learned to trust Logan with her body as well as her heart, discovered that physical love could be gentle and mutual and beautiful, rather than violent and degrading. Logan never pushed, never took more than she was ready to give, and because of this, she found herself wanting to give more and more. By their first anniversary, Winona was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. Logan was overjoyed, already planning for the nursery and talking about teaching their child to ride. But Winona worried. What if she was a terrible mother? What if her damaged past made her incapable of raising a healthy child? Logan reassured her through every moment of panic. "You are going to be a wonderful mother. Look at how much you have overcome. Look at how strong you are. Our child will be blessed to have you." Their son was born in February 1881, during another Texas blizzard that kept the doctor from arriving until after the baby had already made his appearance with the help of 2 neighboring ranch wives. Logan had been there for the entire ordeal, holding Winona's hand and coaching her through the pain. And when he placed their red-faced, squalling son in her arms, Winona felt a love so fierce and protective that it took her breath away. They named him Samuel, after her uncle, and from the beginning, it was clear the boy had inherited his father's temperament. He was a happy, easy baby who smiled readily and seemed content with the world. Watching Logan with their son, Winona felt her heart expand with love she had not known was possible. Logan was a natural father, patient and playful, and Samuel clearly adored him. Samuel Warren closed his store when he turned 70, selling the business to a young couple newly arrived in Dalhart, and moving out to the ranch to live with Logan and Winona. "You have plenty of room," he argued when they protested they did not want to impose. "And I am getting too old to manage on my own. Let me spend my remaining years with family." So Samuel moved into the guest room, and the house rang with 3 generations of noise and laughter. He taught young Samuel to whittle and told him stories about his mother's childhood. He helped Winona with the cooking and household chores. He sat on the porch with Logan in the evenings, discussing cattle and weather and the state of the world. A daughter arrived 2 years after Samuel, a tiny, fierce creature they named Lily, who seemed determined from birth to keep up with her older brother. Winona had worried during her second pregnancy that she could not possibly love another child as much as she loved Samuel, but the moment Lily was placed in her arms, she understood that love multiplied rather than divided. The ranch prospered under Logan's management. His breeding program proved successful, and the Vance Ranch became known throughout the region for quality cattle and horses. They hired more hands, built additional barns and outbuildings, purchased adjoining land when it became available. What Logan had started alone grew into a significant operation that provided employment for a dozen men and their families. Winona found her own place in the ranch's success. She managed the household, yes, but she also took over the business ledgers, discovering she had a head for numbers and organization. She dealt with buyers and suppliers, negotiated contracts, ensured bills were paid and accounts were balanced. Logan teased her that she was actually the one running the ranch while he just played with cows and horses. Life was not without its challenges. Old Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep when young Samuel was 8 and Lily was 6, leaving a hole in their lives that took months to heal from. There were years when drought threatened the herd, when cattle prices fell, when money was tight. There were childhood illnesses that terrified Winona, injuries that sent her heart into her throat, moments when her past trauma still rose up unexpectedly. But through it all, Logan was there. Patient, steady, loving. He never raised his voice in anger, never lifted his hand except in gentleness. He proved to Winona every single day that healthy love was real, that she deserved happiness, that her past did not have to define her future. As the years passed, their family continued to grow. A second son, James, arrived when Lily was 3, followed 2 years later by twin girls who they named Rose and Grace. The ranch house expanded to accommodate the growing family, with Logan personally overseeing the construction of additional bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The children grew up healthy and happy, learning to ride before they could properly walk, helping with ranch chores appropriate to their ages, attending the schoolhouse in Dalhart that had been built when the town grew large enough to support it. They knew their mother had come from a difficult past, though the details were shared only when they were old enough to understand. They knew their father was someone special, a man who had loved their mother enough to wait while she healed. Young Samuel grew into a serious, thoughtful young man who shared his father's affinity for animals and deep love for the land. At 20, he married a local girl named Emma and built a house on the ranch's eastern section, beginning his own herd with cattle from his father's breeding stock. Logan and Winona stood at their son's wedding, holding hands and marveling at how quickly time had passed, at how this strong, confident man had once been the tiny baby they had welcomed during a blizzard. Lily proved to have inherited both her mother's business sense and her father's determination. She announced at 16 that she intended to attend college back east, to learn modern business practices that could benefit the ranch. Logan and Winona were initially hesitant, worried about their fierce daughter so far from home, but they ultimately supported her dream. Lily returned 4 years later with a degree in business and a husband who was a lawyer, settling in Dalhart and opening an office that served ranchers throughout the region. James took after his grandfather, showing an aptitude for woodworking and building that led him to become a skilled carpenter. He traveled throughout Texas and into New Mexico, working on construction projects, before ultimately returning to Dalhart to start his own business building homes and barns. The twins, inseparable from birth, surprised everyone by having completely different personalities despite their identical appearance. Rose was artistic and gentle, spending hours sketching the landscapes and animals of the ranch. Grace was adventurous and bold, the first to attempt riding the most spirited horses, the one who wanted to explore every inch of the ranch's sprawling acreage. Through watching her children grow and thrive, Winona experienced a profound healing that therapy or time alone could never have provided. Every milestone they reached, every accomplishment they celebrated, every moment of joy they experienced, proved to her that good things could come from painful beginnings, that she was not defined by what Marcus Peterson had done to her, that she had built something beautiful and worthwhile with Logan. The 25th anniversary of their wedding arrived in April 1904. Their children planned a celebration at the ranch, inviting friends and neighbors from miles around. The house was decorated with spring flowers. Tables were loaded with food prepared by too many hands to count, and music filled the air as a local band played on the porch. Logan and Winona stood together watching the festivities, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "Did you ever imagine this?" Winona asked quietly. "When you first walked into Samuel's store 26 years ago, did you imagine any of this?" Logan pressed a kiss to her temple. "I imagined something. Not the specific details, maybe, but I knew from the first moment I saw you that you were important. And when you trusted me enough to tell me you were afraid, when I promised to wait as long as you needed, I meant it with everything I had. I would have waited forever for you, Winona." "You did not have to wait forever," Winona said, turning in his arms to face him properly. "You waited exactly as long as I needed, no more and no less. You gave me the gift of time and patience, and because of that, I was able to heal enough to love you the way you deserve to be loved. You saved my life, Logan Vance." "We saved each other," Logan corrected gently. "You gave me purpose beyond just building a ranch. You gave me a reason to be the best man I could be. You gave me a family and a life that is richer and fuller than anything I could have created alone. I love you now more than I did on our wedding day, and I will love you even more tomorrow than I do today." They danced that evening under the Texas stars, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and the community they had built. Young Samuel's son, barely 2 years old, ran between the adults' legs, laughing with pure joy. Lily's twins, born just 6 months prior, slept peacefully in cradles on the porch. James's pregnant wife rested in a chair nearby, her hand on her swelling belly. Rose had covered the walls with sketches of the family, capturing moments throughout the years, while Grace had organized games and competitions that had everyone laughing. As the celebration wound down and guests began departing, Winona stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Logan joined her, slipping his hand into hers with the easy intimacy of decades together. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Winona smiled, her eyes traveling across the ranch that had become her home, the family that had become her heart. "I am thinking about how scared I was that first day you walked into the store, how certain I was that I would never feel safe again, never be whole again. And I am thinking about how wrong I was, how the gentleness and patience of one good man helped me understand that my past did not have to dictate my future. You did the hard work, Logan reminded her. I just held the space for you to do it. You held more than space. You held my heart, even when I was too afraid to give it to you. You held my future, protecting it and nurturing it until I was strong enough to reach for it myself. You held me together when I was falling apart, and you celebrated with me when I finally felt whole again. They stood together in comfortable silence as night fell over the ranch. Somewhere in the darkness, cattle lowed softly. A horse whinnied from the barn. Inside the house, they could hear their children cleaning up from the party, their voices mixing with those of their spouses and children in a symphony of family. The years continued to pass, marked by more grandchildren, the expansion of the ranch, the continued success of their various enterprises. Logan's hair went completely gray, then white, though he remained strong and active well into his 60s. Winona's face showed the lines of a life well lived, laugh lines around her eyes and mouth that spoke of joy rather than sorrow. They celebrated their 40th anniversary in 1919, their 50th in 1929. By then, the ranch had passed largely into young Samuel's capable hands, with Logan acting more as advisor than active manager. They had 14 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren, a legacy that would have seemed impossible during those early terrified days in Samuel's general store. On a warm evening in June 1932, as they sat on the porch watching yet another sunset, Logan took Winona's hand and lifted it to his lips, pressing a kiss to her weathered knuckles just as he had done so many years before. "I would do it all again," he said quietly. "Every moment of patience, every second of waiting, every challenge we faced. I would do it all again for this life with you." Winona leaned against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the solid warmth of him beside her. "I was afraid of men," she said, echoing the words that had started everything. "And you told me to take my time, that you would wait as long as I needed." "Best decision I ever made," Logan replied, his arm tightening around her. "You were worth waiting for. You were worth everything." As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Winona reflected on the journey that had brought her from terror to trust, from brokenness to wholeness, from isolation to belonging. The road had not been easy, and there had been moments when she had doubted she would ever reach this place of peace and joy. But Logan had walked beside her every step of the way, never pushing, never demanding, simply offering his steady presence and unwavering love. Their children and grandchildren visited frequently, filling the house with noise and laughter and life. Young Samuel ran the ranch with the same dedication and skill his father had shown, implementing modern techniques while respecting the traditions Logan had established. Lily's business continued to thrive, now managed largely by her eldest daughter who had inherited her mother's sharp mind for numbers. James had built half the new structures in Dalhart and the surrounding area, leaving a legacy of craftsmanship that would stand for generations. Rose had become a respected artist whose paintings of ranch life hung in galleries as far away as Dallas and Houston. Grace had married a rancher from New Mexico and was raising her own brood of adventurous children on land that stretched to the horizon. Logan and Winona spent their final years exactly as they had spent all their previous ones, together, supporting each other, loving each other with the same deep commitment that had carried them through challenges and triumphs alike. When Logan passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, Winona grieved deeply, but not bitterly. She had been blessed with 57 years of marriage to a man who had shown her what real love looked like, and that was more than many people ever received. She lived another 3 years after Logan's death, spending her time with family, tending the flower garden she had planted decades ago, and sitting on the porch watching the land that had become synonymous with home. Her children worried that she was lonely, but Winona assured them she was content. Logan's love remained with her even in his physical absence, a warmth in her heart that death could not diminish. On a spring morning in 1935, Winona failed to appear for breakfast. Young Samuel, now 64 years old himself, found his mother in her bed, a peaceful smile on her face, clearly having passed during the night. On her nightstand sat the book of poetry Logan had given her during their courtship, bookmarked at a page about enduring love. Next to it lay a letter Logan had written her on their 50th anniversary, words of love and gratitude that she had read countless times in the years since his death. The funeral brought family from across Texas and beyond. 4 generations gathered to mourn a woman who had survived trauma that would have destroyed many people, who had found the courage to trust again, who had built a family and a life that touched countless others. They shared stories about her strength, her kindness, her business acumen, her fierce protection of those she loved, and her absolute devotion to the man who had waited as long as she needed. Young Samuel stood to speak, his voice thick with emotion. "My mother taught us many things," he said, looking out at the assembled crowd. "She taught us that healing is possible, that love can be gentle, that patience is one of the greatest gifts we can give another person. She taught us that our past does not have to define our future, and that with the right support, we can overcome even the most traumatic experiences. But most of all, she taught us about the transformative power of true love, the kind of love my father showed her from the moment they met. He saw her fear and did not run from it. He understood her need for time and space and gave it freely. And because of that patience, because of that understanding, they built something beautiful together that has shaped all our lives." The family buried Winona next to Logan on a gentle rise overlooking the ranch, with a view of the house they had shared and the land they had built together. The marker they placed bore both their names with a simple inscription that captured everything. He waited. She healed. They loved. Years turned into decades. The ranch continued to thrive under the management of subsequent generations. The story of Logan and Winona became family legend, shared with children and grandchildren as an example of what real love looked like, of what patience and understanding could achieve. The house on the hill remained in the family, renovated and updated but maintaining its essential character, still filled with the warmth and love that Logan and Winona had infused into every board and nail. Visitors to the family cemetery would pause at the double marker on the hill, reading the simple inscription and wondering about the story behind those few words. Those who knew the full tale would smile, remembering a scared young woman who found safety in the patience of a gentle cowboy, and a love story that proved healing was always possible when met with understanding and time. The legacy they left was more than just land or wealth, though the ranch continued to prosper. It was a legacy of compassion, of understanding that trauma requires patience to heal, of the knowledge that true love waits without complaint or expectation. It was proof that one person's gentleness could help another person rebuild their life, and that the results of that rebuilding could echo through generations. In the end, the story of Winona and Logan Vance was a simple one, really. A woman who had been hurt found a man who was willing to wait. A man who loved without condition gave a woman the time and space to heal. And together, they proved that even the deepest wounds could mend when approached with patience, that love could indeed conquer fear, and that happily ever after was not just the stuff of fairy tales but a real possibility for those willing to work for it. The Texas sun continued to rise and set over the ranch, golden light spilling across land that had witnessed their entire journey from fear to trust, from brokenness to wholeness, from isolation to belonging. And somewhere in that eternal landscape, in the wind that whispered through the grass and the warmth of the sun on the old house, the love of Logan and Winona Vance lived on, a testament to the healing power of patience and the enduring strength of true love.